Good. Here we go. Welcome to the 21 Agile Leadership Spotlight. And today I'm super happy and proud having Emanuele Quintarelli. I'm not sure if I pronounce it properly. Uh,
Perfectly.
Perfect. As our guest. But more important, I'm so happy and proud what Emanuele will be able to tell us about. It's such an interesting topic. Um, we just had our chat before where I mentioned it. Rendanheyi is something we'll probably touch a little bit today, and I have no idea how to pronounce it properly. I already heard in various languages, but it's not so important. As we know, it's something around hair. We will learn a little bit around hair in the background where these concepts come from, but we'll go way beyond. It's more about the overall principles and how this is important in various other areas and how that might apply to your organizations. But let's first of all welcome Emanuele. And maybe, Emanuele, you can tell probably best a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Mike, thanks so much for having me. Very happy to be here and to talk a little bit with you and our audience today. Very briefly, I spent the last 20 years working in large consulting companies, but always with this idea of helping complex organizations, multinational, global organizations, on one side to become more efficient, what everybody is expecting from consulting companies, but on the other side also to become more humane. And as part of that, the last 10 years specifically, most of my focus has been around the new, crazy, extreme organizational models, of which the Rendanheyi is one. Without trying to find the one solution to rule them all, but really taking inspirations from different environments, different experiences, and trying to support the market in increasing its awareness about the business potential and the people potential of this topic, so new organizational models. And today, together with Boundaryless, I'm working a lot with, as you said, higher group that from maybe a little bit unexpected area from China more than 30 years ago came up with this new totally different exciting model we're going to talk about that is a little bit rewriting, appending what we believed for granted about organizational development and design for the last 40 years.
Right. That's super interesting. And again, this alone this topic itself, it's so mind blowing that it's just beyond what we're used to look at. And so first of all, I mean, we'll try. I think the first step, try to get a little bit of an idea for everyone involved what this Rendanheyi, or let's say what Heyer Group did, is all about. So, what are the core ideas behind? But before, just a little bit of housekeeping. Whoever wants to raise a question, just feel free to put it into the chat, whether on LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll be just taking care of it, pulling it in now, today, and try to get an answer. If it's not possible today, we'll have a follow-up session in December, which will be more about the how you can apply this. And I will make sure that we keep those questions which haven't been answered, and we'll follow and pursue Emanuele, who's super busy, to get an answer for. All right, but now let's start into this. That might be super easy for you, Emanuele, but complicated for us. What has Hayer Group done in these past years to change or transform their organization?
So they came up with really a totally different business and organizational model at the same time, and this is already a novelty. Most firms only look at the market side or at the internal side in isolation. In 1984, Ayer, as we know it, wasn't there yet. There was an appliance factory in China that wasn't performing. Actually, was on the brink of bankruptcy. Not able to produce quality products, not able to make customers happy. And at that point, this young director called Jiang Rimin that until last month was the CEO and has been the CEO for more than 35 years, really thought about how to reinvent the culture, the business model, and the organizational design of the company to get closer to customers. And as you can tell, this is the need that I think 99% of the organizations in the world today have: customer centricity, customer intimacy, being customer driven. They did that, but they did that by simplifying, if you want, the organization to the extreme and coming up with this concept of the Rendanheyi, meaning reducing the distance to zero between every employee and every customer. Not in a theoretical way, but in a very concrete way. Just to give you an example, it means that the salaries of every employee is paid directly by the outcomes he or she produces for customers. So there is no intermediation mechanism in the organization to distribute compensation and rewarding. There is a real direct contact. They went through a number of stages, so let's just keep in mind that this took decades, but all of these stages were meant to make employees able to become entrepreneurs. And this is the other concept. Every employee, as Drager was saying, should be is around CEO. In this case, it's really an owner. It becomes an owner of the company with equity in the company and with responsibility and accountability for the outcomes. And the second point is that all the bureaucracy, and that's again, I think, a key need that we all have, all the bureaucracy, all the overhead, all of the delays that we are used to in organizations has magically disappeared. And the last point, the last interesting point is that this is not coming from Silicon Valley. This is not coming from a small organization. This is not coming from tech. It's coming from China, from manufacturing, and from a company that has 80,000 people. And when I hear lots of excuses from some of my clients, I cannot do this because I'm too big, I'm too have history, I don't have the culture. Well, this is the reminder it's possible. Haier today is the global leader in white good appliances, and actually they acquired many of their competitors in US, in Europe, in Asia. So we are talking about a new organizational model, and we are going to get into the details a bit more, that has proved its business value and its people value.
Right. So this is already a very good intro, and you mentioned it, one word, which is zero distance to the customer, even with the one interesting concept, salaries literally being paid by the market, and second, everybody more or less a CEO, or let's say an entrepreneur. How can we think about this? I mean, you just mentioned 80,000 people, and now even spread across the globe, right? You mentioned they purchased other companies, so I think they purchased GE Appliances, right? GE Appliances is something which they integrated and rolled out. I'm not sure if this is a good term. Brought them on board. It's maybe better to bringing them on board than rolling out their concept, but that's being now followed all across the globe, in Europe, in America. How can we imagine this to happen and to work? If we
So there are we as Banderless, our role in collaboration with Haier is not to just spread the word about Haier and Rendanheyi.
yeah
It's about empowering organizations that are very different, very far, and don't want to go be Haier to take inspiration from them. And we believe that there are some universal needs behind not the solution, but what Haier did. And the universal needs are innovation. Every CEO wants his or her company to be more innovative, to be more disruptive. Everybody wants to have motivation, employee engagement. We know from Gallup that 85% of employees are not engaged. More than 18% are actively disengaged. So we have a huge problem. From Gary Hamel and Michele Zanini, we know that the cost of organizational bureaucracy, it's $8.4 trillion. Trillion dollars. It's a toll on the global economy. And in 1988, Peter Drucker said that the number of managers and the number of organizational layers would have been reduced by 50% and two-thirds in 20 years. Actually, it didn't happen. So now we have bigger organizations that are slower, people that are more disengaged, organizations that are not able to keep up with the market. And we see that from the life expectancy of our organizations that are constantly falling. So this is a universal problem. Hire has found solutions to these problems by, if you want, two principles. Very simple. The first one is you need to unbundle, you need to fragment the firm in many small entrepreneurial and autonomous teams.
Right.
So even if you have 80,000 people, in this case in Hire, you may have 4,000 what they call micro enterprises, so small companies with lots of freedom. And the responsibility to talk and to serve the market lays into these small companies. So the monolith has been fragmented in sensors, into ventures, into initiatives that have the speed and agility in the purest sense to understand what the market is asking and to anticipating actually what the market wants. The second concept is maybe newer than the first one, is being able to reconnect these thousands of small teams without hierarchy. And let me repeat this, 4,000 teams that can come together in a fluid way around the user scenarios, around user needs, without managers, without structure, without everything we have given for granted in organizational design. So think about labor division, think about coordination, think about alignment through rewarding and performance. We have always believed that hierarchy was the solution to that. It's not the only solution. Actually, it's not a scalable solution because if you use hierarchy, the price, the cost is really the one I was describing before. So disengagement, lack of innovation, and so on. So Hire has identified contracts, dynamic contracts, not hierarchy, not structure, agreements between many parties as the construct to guarantee this agility, this fluidity around the customer without adding managers. At some point, they asked 10,000 managers to go and find a job in the micro enterprises. Just imagine that you ask 10,000 people to stop managing other people and to start contributing directly, proactively, operationally to the results. Again, these two concepts we believe are central, and then there are a number of solutions to make this happen. But most organizations will need more entrepreneurship, so smaller teams that are able to serve the customer, and most organizations need better ways to coordinate this kind of decentralized initiative. So that's why we believe this is unique. It works, it scales, and it is applicable to probably 90% of the market.
Right. All right. So we're trying to boil a very complex topic down into understandable pieces, and we're not yet there to talk about, all right, so how do you go there next week or next year, or I don't know. But let's say you talked about this ecosystem, right? So now we have these 4,000 micro enterprises. By the way, do you know how large they typically are? Is there something?
It depends. So it depends. It depends on, of course, the business, because these micro enterprises have different businesses, different roles.
Right.
And just to give you an idea, there are 300 of them that are customer-facing micro. So they interact with the market, right. They sell, they serve, and there are 3,700 micro enterprises that actually are called node micro enterprises, and they serve. They are internally facing. They serve their colleagues.
Hmm.
And the dimension, it's usually small, so it's usually in the 10 people, a bit more. In some cases, you have some larger micro enterprises because of the kind of business they look after. But a key principle in hire, you were referring to G appliances.
Hmm.
Kevin Nolan, in a conversation with us, Kevin Nolan is the CEO of G Appliance, said,
Hmm.
if you're talking about a model, when you talk about hire, you're probably wrong
Hmm.
because there is no model. And maybe we can talk about this. This is really about basing an organization design on complexity. So avoiding to impose any rigid structure on top of reality, and to leave the space to the different countries, to different businesses to decide to a larger extent how they want to work. So there is no single way. There is no only way, and even the different acquisitions, different company are at different stages of maturity in this journey. Hire didn't ask G Appliances to apply the Rendanheyi from day one.
Hmm. Hmm.
They inviting them to be in China, to understand and to breathe the model, to then tailor it to their history, to their business, their culture, and they're still into this journey. We're going to publish an interview with Antonio Boadas, the Chief Communication Officer of GA Appliances, very soon, and you'll be able to hear about that. And it's really a journey. It's not applying a framework on top
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
something that doesn't have anything in common with Hire China.
Yeah. So as I also recognize, it's hard to not mention the word model because somehow we still talk
It's
about
I
model, but
struggle
it
with
is a
that
model.
as well.
And we don't want to contribute here that the next model is being created in next year and the next few years people are adopting a model. But Philip is actually wondering about this question too, and it might have been answered already now what you said. Probably there are shared services, right? Some most should be front face towards
Thanks,
customer.
Philip. This is the perfect question.
Yeah.
So yes, I was of course simplifying a bit. So
Uh,
once you have fragmented the firm, of course, you should ask yourself: is there anything in common? We are still a firm. We are still a company. So yes, of course. Otherwise, we would have been in 4,000 companies with different brands. And really totally disbundled. So yes, one of the key concepts for guaranteeing, I would use the words of Sonia Blignot, and there's not a messy coherence to this thing. So it's not the kind of coherence we want to have in a traditional organization. It's messy, it's complex, it's fluid, is to have some central mechanisms, so some common services, some standard services, and that's what Hire calls SSPs, shared services platforms, meaning HR, IT, legal, sometimes marketing. The former support functions in the firm, actually they get fragmented as well as the others, so they feel the pressure from their clients, in this case mostly internal clients, but not only. So they need to be entrepreneurial as well. They need to give value for money as well. And this is where the bureaucracy of the organization is hidden. But they are meant to provide common services to the entire organization. So basically, you do two steps. The first one step is identifying these, cores of entrepreneurship in which you have a catalog of services you can provide to others and you can be paid for. And then you look at the common services that will enable these entrepreneurial people to get their work done. This central part, if you want, is SSPs. And if you can imagine, this is the hardest part. If you look at traditional organizations, if you talk about sales, maybe it's easier because they are already exposed to the market, they feel the pressure from the market. Where the distance is higher between the market and the organization is in support function. So convincing HR people or IT people to really give value for money is difficult. In Hire, competition between micro enterprises is real Meaning that if I'm not happy with the service that you, HR team, are giving me, I can usually go and buy the same services on the market.
Hmm.
So, support functions suddenly are in competition with the market.
Hmm.
And it's a matter of organization design. You can design where you want to do that, but the principle is unless you give value for money, you're going to be disappearing because we want to reduce bureaucracy, we want efficiency, we want entrepreneurship also in support functions.
Right. So wonderful questions. Thank you, Philip. That was interesting. And obviously, I mean, these are the principles, these are the core ideas, and then what is really happening? It's, as you said, messy is probably a ground condition you have to expect. So the typical, 9 to 5 job from Monday to Friday, and then everything is calm. Um, doesn't really work when the market itself is very turbulent. So somehow you have to address turbulence with turbulence, right? It's this, I think Ashby's law. You have to
Exactly. This
address
is
complexity with
yeah. This is
complexity,
what
right?
most people don't. The critics that I hear very often about IR is,
Mm.
yeah, but they are very competitive. They put lots of
Mhm.
pressure on people, and the answer
Mhm.
is yes, they do. But they don't do it because they want to do it. I think
Right.
they did it because they realized that the market was changing, and I think that after more than 35 years after COVID-19, we felt that this is real. It's not, complexity theory. It's not complex adaptive system theory. It's what we live every day. And exactly as you were saying, if you want to play a different role in the market, if you want to be an aggregator, if you want to be a platform, if you want to play a role into an ecosystem, what Conway's law and what Hashby law says is that you need to mirror your role in the market with your internal structure. So if you want to be an ecosystem outside, you need to be an ecosystem inside. And guess
Mm.
what? That's what IR does. They applied principles from the market
Mm.
into organization design.
Mm.
And the market has this great advantage of scaling, scaling, scaling without adding, bureaucracy. And that's what IR has produced internally.
Right. So Roman is pointing to what Neil's flagging. I think is pointing. I mean, he's referring to the peach model, right? The sort of there's a core inside, and it's also about this distance to the market. And I'm not sure if this is somehow referring to similar sources. Not sure how important that is, but um, actually, I'm not sure if you have any ideas on that. But yeah,
I don't know enough about
yeah,
Neil's work, but I would say this idea of unbundling the organization, it's in no way unique to IRE.
right.
Morningstar has been unbundling the firm up to the single individual with clues, colleague letters of understanding. You have individuals in the network.
Right.
Uh, Björzerg has done that with their small teams. And there are many, Spotify, Agile as squads.
Yeah.
To me, this is the easiest part. So fragmenting the firm, or in holacracy and sociocracy, you have circles, right? So there are many pods, there are many examples here, but that's the easy part. What,
Yeah.
in a nutshell, we have solved.
Yeah.
What we haven't solved is how to rebundle these teams together without re-adding, bureaucracy into the firm or delays or disengagement. We haven't. Ayer is the only company in the world, the best of our knowledge, that really mastered this. And to give an example, they're doing this through smart contracts and
Mhm.
blockchain, meaning that all of this is automatic. You don't have a manager, you have a smart contract. When we reach our bidding target, as they call it, the revenues get distributed according to the agreement to all the parties
Well.
without adding structure. So it's not a DAO, it's not a distributed autonomous organization yet,
Yeah.
but the direction is the one of getting rid of the unnecessary
Mhm.
structure to
Mhm.
let the actors in a complex system to rearrange and to interact themselves in a non-linear way. So it's really the implementation of 40 years of theory. From the
Right.
books, now we are into reality.
Right. That might relate to Roman's core question because a lot of things build up here to say what you just said. How would you coordinate this hundreds of, maybe even thousands of micro enterprises? We'll come to that. Is the eco? What are the actual? What is the glue of the ecosystem? What makes it work? But I love what you just said when you mentioned technology, because I think nowadays, and this is very interesting because I not sure about you, Emmanuel. I love people over technology and process and everything, but obviously we're living in an age where artificial intelligence, hyper connectivity, we're more and more attached to technology. And this makes a lot of things possible, which wasn't the case 10, 20 years ago. I recently heard a case from Choi Justice about Tesla, how they, for example, bring up a problem to solve and to swarm, and this is driven by technology. It's all, technology brings up, here's an issue, who wants to jump on it, how quickly can you solve it. This actually goes way beyond our current understanding of organization. Now I would love to come back to this question of what is essential to make an ecosystem like that work.
And maybe we can touch also on this question
Yeah,
from Roman
yeah,
about who is
yeah.
telling them to meet. Nobody. Believe me, there is no. And this is the question I always get. What's the coordination mechanism? Who is
Right.
deciding? Who is pushing them?
Yeah.
Nobody. Who is deciding that a city should come together or a swarm should come together? Nobody. It's a self managing and self governing system in which order emerges from many to many simple interactions. What is needed is only the mechanisms for this interaction to happen, not having anybody to call the people to meet. And I will explain technically how it happens. Technology is important here. An example: in most organizations, we are used to to nominate people and say, starting from tomorrow, you are going to join this project. Allocation. But we know already from Valve, for example, that open allocation is possible. So you can give people desks with wheels and asking them to join the projects they want to join. Now, amplify this to the extreme. Let's say that you need people and you are going to publish this position in an online platform. And everybody in the company can see that because everything is transparent. And you can ask to join the micro enterprises in which you believe you can contribute the most. But this doesn't happen only at people level. It happens also at the team level. Let's say I want to build a big venture and I need many capabilities. Let's say I want to, a pandemic happens. I have fridges, you have vaccines, somebody has the distribution channels, and we need to come together. One way is to have one manager, one leader coordinating us. One other is to publish a contract to say, I need vaccines, I need fridges, I need distribution, I need something else, and to let micro enterprises bid, so negotiate in an open setting
Mhm.
on this agreement, saying, I can give you this. I want to have this percentage of the revenues that are going to be generated. Actually, it's profits technically, but anyway, so the orchestration, it's dynamic and it's emergent. Somebody is going to find and need vaccines or home appliances or serving, a customer for his entire life cycle, right? So you need many capabilities, many actors, many pieces of hardware and software, and the companies are going to bid. They're going to say, I want to do this, I can do this in this way. Then there is, of course, somebody that is going to connect, and to negotiate and to select the different parties. And then this new agreement in higher terms is called an EMC, an ecosystem micro community
Mhm.
emerges and basically creates value. And this value is distributed between all the parties according to the contract they sign. It's an ecosystem. Think about a forest. This is what Jean Grumin keeps saying.
Mhm.
In the West, you think about trees, the individual, my company, my team. In the East, we think about the forest. And the goal in hire is not so much the tree. It's a rainforest, something that can survive even if the tree is dying. So, like in a VC and incubation environment, actually you have 4,000 bets. So 4,000 opportunities. Some of them are going to fail. They're going to compete for light, for water, for nutrients in the ground. Some are going to explode, to become unicorns. Some are going to die. That's perfect. That's a massive experimentation, a massive incubation, a massive learning machine. The learning organization we always, dreamt
Yeah.
of. So there is no hidden hierarchy. There is no coordination. There are customer needs. There are some other mechanisms that maybe we can talk about, but still it's emergent and it's distributed. This is the unique aspect of
Right,
hire.
right, right. So this obviously adds to Roman's second question: who was doubting if there is potentially actually a hidden hierarchy, like within every normal organization, right? And we don't assume any of these organizations being just magic, right? I mean, it's
No.
human beings, and
Yeah.
there will be troubles. But currently we talk about principles, so it's important to understand the principles. And what I was just wondering, again, talking about or thinking about what you just said, and talking about ecosystem, we know the traditional models, and because we have the word agile here, we were joking a little bit before what this actually means, right? Especially in terms of organizations. We have approaches in the market which look nice, but still basically set up the traditional hierarchy, right? There is a board, the board defines the strategy derives the portfolio is decided by executives, managers take over, and then the supply chain delivers. Well, this is a hierarchy, as agile as you call it, or whatever the poster looks like, where it comes from. Now, my question still is, what about strategy and portfolio when suddenly the magic, what you just described, happens?
That's
Entrepreneurs come up with
that's the other part I was referring
yeah.
to. So strategy, of course, could be the point in which everything I've said is going to fail because you
Mm,
have these many small teams, but then maybe there is something cascading down from the top. Actually, it's not happening in here. In here, strategy also is distributed. It's called industry platforms.
right.
And industry platforms are, if you want, big bets, big areas, very big areas with billion of dollars of investments and value creation with an owner, because in IR everything has an owner. So an industry platform has an owner, an SSP has an owner, a micro enterprise has an owner, meaning an individual that has the responsibility at the end. So it's not a DAO, it's a human being at the end. There are still human. There are 80,000 human beings. So industry platforms are a way to say we believe that strategically speaking, we want to invest year. But instead of telling the micro enterprises you should work in this industry platform, what they say again is let's use a pool mechanism. Let's put money on the table. Let's say we are going to invest in this area. If you want to take this money, you need to come to me to sign an agreement with me. In this case, it's called Valuation Adjustment Mechanism, VAM, but it's an agreement, it's an investment agreement, and saying, I'm going to give you this money, but you're going to realize these outcomes with this money, and we are going to distribute the value. It's ecosystemic, meaning that the ecosystem, not just the small team, is going to benefit from it. So even the strategy, it's not totally emergent because these directions are set from the top, but it's invitation based, meaning this direction. If you want to take this money, you can do that. If you want to do something else, you can do that as well. You won't get the investment. So it's an attraction. It's like a strange attractor, in complexity. Nodes are naturally going that direction, but you cannot exactly estimate when and how many money. So it's very fluid. It's very, if you want, reactive. It's very unpredictable, and this is scary. It's not centralized. Even the strategy is probably one of the best examples of distributed strategy that we have right now in the market.
So that's interesting. Russ asked this question, which most people then, whenever there is a revolutionary approach, probably come first to. But what about the traditional systems which are surrounding it, right? Like regulatory change, like new regulation, new laws coming up, or intrinsic valuable uh, goods or services or whatever people are attached to. So how's that solved or
I think there
handled?
are two different questions. The first one is that we are working a lot with regulated companies. Think
Yeah.
about pharma, think about finance. You know, it's not just a matter of being ready, it's a matter of
Mm.
respecting the law and being under the spot. Also, public spot, their customers, the market. So for sure, you need to keep in mind that there are barriers to this, there are constraints to this,
Right.
but we are working with them to co-create solutions, so contextual solutions, not copy-pasting what I did in China, also in these environments with the compliance, with the legal team, with the regulatory team, so people that at the end represent the market and the duties that these players have.
Mhm.
So this is possible. Actually, these are constraints that unlock the ingenuity, the creativity of the firm because they can respect the rules and build on top of the rules. And very often, my experience is that not all the rules must necessarily be respected in the way you are respecting them now. So when you see this wide spectrum of possibilities, you can still stay within the law, but coming out with new solutions. In terms of, yeah, if there is something that is intrinsically valuable but not revenue generating, that's the SSP. So, maybe you need an HR team because you need to hire people, you need to train people, maybe you need an IT team and you need security in that. So these people, these SSPs, should follow the same rules, but in some companies they have a budget at the beginning of the year. There is, somehow guaranteed. So that the business-facing functions, these micro enterprises, are going to pay a bit of their revenues to cover the common services that they will use during their year. So not everything it's emergent, and this is key in this contextual design and this emerging design that you need instead of copying what Azure does. But there are mechanisms to do that. So it's not 0 or 1, everything emergent or everything centralized. What I'm saying is that so far we have centralized everything or quite everything.
Right.
Now we're seeing that we can move to the other extreme with some parts that will stay more centralized.
Right. Right. Yeah. So there's two questions basically left probably for today. Next time we'll talk more about the how, especially not attached to Hayer or Hire or Rendanheyi, whatever we might pronounce these things, but more for the generic application in any organization. The first question is probably about this one, what Scott talked about, and Roman was actually raising a similar question, the role of leaders, and Scott was, I think, pointing to leadership, which is a little bit different to formal leaders. And probably both of them are asking, like, how did that start? And we talked about, you mentioned ownership. Everybody is somehow an entrepreneur. How can we think about this in terms of
John Webin explicitly talks about making every employee a CEO. You can translate it in making every employee a leader.
Mhm.
And this brings lots of responsibility and lots of pressure. It means you won't have a job, but you need to find a job within the company, as you will do within the market. And that means joining micro enterprises, creating micro enterprises. So this is a model of natural leadership in which you have more leaders, not less leaders. There is a specific kind of leadership, the architecting leadership, that we don't talk much about in other companies. And this is a leadership that designs this minimum viable structure that we need for the teams to work together, the opportunities to bubble up, the people to bid. So these basic mechanisms that you have in any human system, of course. But on top of that, the behaviors will determine, so the people behaviors will determine the results. So the leaders are situated in each part of the organization, in each micro enterprise, in each ecosystem micro community, in each industry platform. What they call the owners are really leaders. So they are not the bosses of the employees, but they have responsibility for that piece of that node, to call it in higher terms. But then you also have a different kind of leadership, the leadership of thinking, taking the responsibility to rethink the organization design. This is what Jiang Ruimin did. So in this case, it's mostly, not only centralized, but I say mostly because the EMC concept, this concept of having multiple micro enterprises to come together, didn't come from Jiang Ruimin. It popped up in 2019, after more than 30 years, from a micro enterprise that didn't want only to compete with others, but wanted also to collaborate with others. So you have this model of co-opetition that again emerged from the system, not from the boss, not from the leader. So it's also this kind of leadership is a little bit distributed. Maybe it could be more distributed. At the end, higher is not perfect. It's not the answer to all the pains of the world.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to the final and second question. So I hope, Scott, that was at least an interesting first touch point. And you mentioned it before, I think it's not about creating a new model out there, which is supposed to be a blueprint, and now the next generation of companies about to go for copy pasting initiatives. As you mentioned, Spotify today, it somehow happened there, and it's quite funny. We'll have one guest from them in January here on board, who's actually talking about their struggles now with the scale. It's exactly the same problem. They're growing. Growth is their topic because they're in the market and they're a big player, and now they struggle with the same issues. But what do you think are the ingredients, the core, if you say, the minimum viable ingredients to even think about such an approach? But if you're consulting companies, you're talking to them, that's your core business. Would that always be a all-in thing? Like, here's a bank, 30,000 people. Hey guys, either all or nothing. And what do you think? Where to start?
So, as I said in a different event, the first reaction I get from boards, CEOs of big companies: you must be crazy. You must be crazy if you want me to do this.
Exactly.
Because they are scared. They feel so distant from this. And the second statement is, we don't want to do what they do. We don't want to copy them. And I think that's perfect. There is no way you can copy it, because you don't have the same culture, you don't have the same history, you don't have the same market, the same needs, the same people. Nothing. Everything is different. But I think, going back to those universal needs, you need to be interested to address those needs, or you need to be filling those needs if you want, right? So if your goal is pure efficiency, the Rendanheyi is not your model at all. It's not the goal. It's not the goal. It's redundant. It's chaotic, if you want. It's emergent. It's unpredictable. It's the opposite of scalable efficiency. If you want to protect employees at the best, again, this is not the right cultural fit, because there is pressure in it. If you are not, if you are risk averse, so at the end, if you don't want to experiment, you want to have something that has been tested by the market for 30 years, that's not what we are talking about. So there are many reasons for not doing it. And I'm gonna say right now, there are 62,000 companies studying what Hire is doing, 62,000. But there are only a few big companies that are already applying it. So we are clearly at the beginning. There is lots of interest, but we are at the beginning. But what I'm saying is that if you look for innovation, maybe you are a leader of the market, but you are a huge company, you want to reinvent yourself before the market is going to disrupt yourself, that's the model you can look at. If you want to not pay lip service, but to really empower your people to come up with new business ideas and to benefit from them, to become entrepreneurs, so to get profits also from that. That's the model. If you want to reduce the distance from customers in a sincere way, not just again from a marketing perspective, this could be the right model. You have to be open to failure. You have to be open to experimentation. You need to take responsibility about organization design. Again, this is something that most organizations don't want to do. Business models, yes, but organization design is something that those weird people in HR will talk about. We don't care if we are the board or if we are the business people. What I'm saying is that if you want to succeed in this environment, you need to marry, you need to bridge the business and the organization. They are two sides of the same coin. They are strategic, they are both strategic. And you need to find your own solutions. With one client, we have a board with 39 questions. 39 questions, and there are difficult questions. What is going to happen if my microenterprise fails? I was the boss. I had the corner office. I had my car. I gave everything up. I created a microenterprise. I have no status. I lost everything, and now my microenterprise fails. What am I going to do? Am I going to be retired? Am I going to be fired? Exactly. These are concrete questions people want to know before, before doing it. Or, okay, they want to be entrepreneurial. Are they going to give up some of their base salary? Mm-hmm. Sometimes in Europe, you cannot even talk about that because it's forbidden by the law. So there are some difficult questions. And there is for sure a journey of experimentation, but also of confidence that you need to create. You need to demonstrate the value before asking the organization to dismantle the hierarchy. And we believe that there are some organizational hacks, maybe this is something we can talk about next time, for making this pace layering approach, so different speeds in the organization, different approach, the existing hierarchy and what is emerging to coexist with a pull mechanism towards the future.
Right. Super amazing topic. And I was just thinking when you laid this out in front of us, it is somehow a decision we know from the Matrix, right? This red pill, blue pill, like this sort of, there has to be the point in your life where, first of all, you face this decision, number one. And then number two, you have to be able, first of all, as a leader, to take the decision that you basically say, like, we're talking about ecosystems here, but actually the world is an ecosystem of ecosystems. And the question is, and this has been debated recently on LinkedIn, I was following it, there are still companies who succeed, right? There are hierarchies, traditional companies.
Most of them.
But exactly, most of the companies still are there. But you pointed out today, what a tremendous waste of resource, capacity, and potential, first of all, there is. So they could do way better. Second, they risk talent, existing talent, and also I think there is the risk of getting more talent, because who wants to join these companies in the next 10 years? Probably not the best people from all over the places. And number three, there is, we know this, it's sort of the boiling frog syndrome. There is this little creeping death which might appear in someday in this fast growing exponential world. And we're talking about the bigger ecosystem now. It might suddenly be a misfit. And this is the interesting thing. But what Flavio points out here is probably adding to what you said before. Why is it so hard? And why can't the big managers and those who have to make the first step? Because, a small team can't make this decision and say, hey, that's a cool idea. We're not going for this direction. And
yeah, so that's true. We have an example we are going to publish in Italy. There are 50 people company. They attended one of our trainings and they did it. So we met them after a few months and said, we did it. Done. Cool. Okay. Most of our clients are not like that. I don't think the goal is a flat hierarchy. If you think about sociocracy and holacracy, but also higher, is it a hierarchy? I wouldn't say that. Is it flat? Not really. The goal is having a complex system. A complex system is not really like a hierarchy. It's a many to many dynamic system. Why it is so difficult for big companies? Well, that's exactly the opposite of what they have designed and done for the last 150 years. So I understand them. Of course, they must be scared. They don't believe this is needed. That's to me the first answer. Why? Why should we do this? Why? From a business perspective, if you don't answer this question, the conversation is ending here with the board. The second point is, okay, I want to have those benefits. Cool. What does it mean for me? And the journey should be palatable, acceptable, and still quick enough to demonstrate the value, not in 3 years. We don't do 3 years GANs. It should give something in a matter of months. So, it's not that easy. I know we are going to talk about this. It's not a transformation, it's an evolution journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that most companies are ready for. So, there is lots of work to do. And we are here also to share a bit of these ideas, to invite people to study, to think about themselves, and to find the courage.
Right.
You need lots of courage to experiment with this.
But I love what you just said. It's not a transformation thing. It's more of setting the pace for a different perspective, probably different values, different purpose, and then everything comes from there. And this is probably the most frightening topic for most. And even if you have external shareholders, that might not be, you might not have the freedom, the degree of freedom to start there, right?
But you can sell the value, you can sell the benefits to
Yeah,
to
yeah,
to to them.
yeah,
And the good news, I think there is a big difference in the last 5 years. I think we've been talking about complexity for
yeah,
forever.
right,
We've been talking about self-management forever.
right.
And the obvious objection, the objection I had with Brian Robertson when I did my holacracy training was, what's the biggest company that did this? And Zappos is the usual example with a bit more than 1,000 people. So the conclusion was, this doesn't scale. It's only for small companies. But when you see a manufacturing company with 80,000 people buying another manufacturing company in the US, and you see Zappos, we're going to talk about that, applying the same concepts in a different company, in a different culture, in a different part of the world, in a different business, and you see other connections with other pioneers, you start to believe this is the beginning of something that is an evolution of the market. We are at the beginning,
Right.
but just keep in mind that right now, something like 10% of the market is already experimenting with self-governance. It was 2% a few years ago. So it's a small part,
Yeah.
it's a growing and meaningful part yet.
Wonderful, wonderful finish for today, I think. First of all, I think Philip was asking for where to get more information about these topics. So here is one link we provided for you, the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Enabling Organization. I think you call it Triple E or something, right? Or well, however the name is, but there is a lot of resources there. And number two, you mentioned the story you will publish from Italy. Might be in Italian, I don't know, but it might be no English. Okay,
So,
otherwise
so,
I'll
so
be
we have
ready
something called the trio conversations,
for your
in which
conversation.
we learn from some of these companies, from Jibber Rags, from Björnzorg, from Morningstar.
Yeah,
And we have Bosch coming up, we have Fujitsu, another example in Japan.
right,
And
right.
these guys haven't copied here.
Yeah, yeah,
They experimented with some of those ideas in their own unique way. So if you want to look, just reach out to me and we'll share the link now or next time.
yeah,
But
yeah.
everything we do is open source. So you can go there. We have canvases to do projects. We have conversations. We have posts. So just reach out. The company is called Boundaryless, as you have seen, and the site is boundaryless.io.
Awesome. So this is it. We'll on LinkedIn. I think your profile is connected. We'll also post the additional links and everything else. If I mean, first of all, anybody has an additional question about how to do these things, how maybe to learn more about the practice, 15th of December, right before Christmas, we'll have a second session with Emanuele, and I'm super excited already, which will obviously go way beyond hair, but really go into this, sort of principles, and then how could these topics be approached in concrete situations. And we'll try to get as much possible wisdom out of Emanuele's brain here into the space, uh, in order basically to inspire, to think different and think beyond the boundaries. For now, it's been a super pleasure having had you, Emanuele, on this session, and I thank you so much for this super interesting information. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time, 15th of December.
Me too. Thank you so much.
And thanks, of course, to all the people who raised their questions. There are still some in the queue. We'll look at it and make sure that you get an answer, and hopefully see you next time. Take care.
Bye bye.